Good morning. I know folks in Florida, when it gets too cold, you get reports of iguanas falling off the trees. Here in the Central Valley, when it gets cold, if you come here actually, the birds start to go ice skating. I mean, it's like, it's like, yeah. For those of you that aren't familiar with frost, I mean that's the ice crystal. This is a bird bath. So yeah, it was 28 degrees this morning. As of right now, it's warmed up to 30, well, between 33 and 34. But there are certain sections of my yard that is still actually quite cold. Quite cold as in, let's see. Yeah, quite cold as in it's still in the like 32s. But yeah, 28 this morning, 28 yesterday. So you know, I was reading something interesting. The reason why all of a sudden we're getting this cold is really because of the rain that we had just a few weeks ago, several weeks ago, and that was because of the evaporation of the rainwater, which brings in all this cold air. But yeah, this is what our tropicals are having to deal with. But today I wanted to talk about some of the advantages really of growing tropical fruit trees in containers. I mean, being out here in this cold is obviously a very good reason why you would want to put some of your tropical fruit trees in a container, so that way you can shelter it when need to. I mean, really, if it weren't for the fact that we're able to grow trees in containers, I mean, I probably won't be able to grow tropical fruit trees in my office. I mean, think about forget about pushing your the growing zones. Try pushing corporate policy to allow you to grow tropical fruit trees in your office. But that's a different story. But yeah, just there are not a whole lot, but there are some tremendous benefits of growing tropical fruit trees in containers, which I will discuss. So yeah, day 2 of day 3, where it's going to be below freezing. So yeah, you know what? In many ways, towards the end of towards the end of February is probably the worst when it comes to frost. Just because when you think about it, I mean, these tropical fruit trees, they've been they've been beaten down already. In this case, in this year, since middle of November, December, January, and now we're approaching middle of February, towards the end of February. So 4 months, these trees have been beaten down with the cold and the frost. I mean, Cavendish banana is a prime example. But you know what? This guy does this every year, so that's fine. I know he's gonna bounce right back as soon as the weather warms up. But the thing with growing tropical fruit trees that you want to take into consideration is actually, if you come here, I'll show you really quick. Perhaps the biggest point about, or biggest consideration that you want to think about when growing tropical fruit trees in containers as opposed to in the ground is going to be really the growing medium that you are going to use in the container. Here's a really good example. So in my case, knowing that these tropical fruit trees like the soil acidity to be a bit more on the acidic side of things, generally between 5.5 to 6.5. And our native clay soil that is underneath me and also in my raised bed, that's at one point I was just using it to grow vegetables. But our native clay soil, if you don't make any amendments to it, if you've not been conditioning it, is way too high for the tropical fruit trees to thrive in. So that being the case, in my case, specific to my situation, the mixture that I go with when planting stuff in a container is a mixture of perlite, peat moss. Peat moss helps to acidify the soil and also allows for aeration. And it's also incredibly light, which means I can pick these guys up easier. The perlite allows for aeration. There's a lot of gaps and microscopic spaces in these perlites, which are the little plastic looking, styrofoam looking things. These are perlites. It's essentially popped volcanic rock that's man-made. And then a big one for me, in addition to perlite and peat moss, is the addition of sand. You obviously can't tell, but this is a mixture of sand, peat moss, and perlite. These really are the only three ingredients that, for the most part, I use when growing containerized trees, tropical fruit trees. So with this three combination, it provides for good drainage. Emphasis on drainage. Drainage is a must just because most trees do not like the feet to be wet. With clay soil, it's a sure thing that the roots are gonna be wet. So let me just show you real quick by what I mean by that. If you come here, okay? So this is a mixture that I've made myself. This is really my go-to for containerized trees. And then our native clay soil. This is what you probably will find in your yard. Let's take the drainage test. All right. So check it out. This is the one on the right is the mixture that I've made myself, and the one on the left, my left, is clay soil. Where I'm going with this is you absolutely do not want clay soil in your container trees. This is why. So it's slowly draining. This is what you want. You want to almost flush the roots of the tree that's in this container. I mean, this is its house now. You want to be able to just flush it thoroughly and not have any sitting water at all. I mean, this is drainage. When you think about drainage, where there is drainage, there's aeration, as in there's oxygen. Again, the tree's roots need oxygen. If it's like this, I mean, it hasn't been drained at all. It's going to be sitting here for a while. So this is why you absolutely do not want native clay soil in any of your containerized growing medium mixture. You want something like this where like there's no standing water. It's moist. I mean, the roots are gonna just suck up the remaining soil at the same time as it sucks up those. I'm sorry. The roots are gonna suck up the remaining moisture, and at the same time as it sucks up those moisture, there's gonna be little air gaps that's developed here and there, and that's how the roots breed. So yeah, the big thing with growing trees in containers is going to be your growing medium. Choose wisely. Do not use or do not even incorporate any of your clay soil into it. still hasn't been drained at all. Imagine how long this is going to take for it to hopefully make it to the bottom. It may be days, maybe weeks, who knows? Whereas this one it's done. You're talking matter of minutes. So good growing medium, no, don't use it. So so here are some of the big benefits really of growing tropical fruit trees in containers. In my case, my front and backyard, where there's actual dirt, where there's ground, it's roughly 2,000 square feet. Very, very small. However, at the same time, by having a lot of trees in containers, it really allows me to have a lot of trees, more than what I have in the ground. And these trees in containers, they will continue to grow. They produce fruits. They thrive in our environment. And also, more importantly, it allows you to have a lot of different varieties. I mean, in my case, instead of just having like one mango variety, which is really my go-to, the Manila mango here, I also, in addition to the this mango here, I've got a number of other varieties of mangoes that are grown in containers, just because, again, I'm absolutely out of space in my yard. So containers is a great option for you to collect more trees. So another option, another reason, a benefit really to having containerized trees is the fact that they're mobile. In my case, actually, well, I'll show you. In my case, if you come here, being that this is, again, we've got like 3 months of cold already. Check it out. All of my more sensitive trees, my mangoes, wax jambus, are mobile. They're in this containerized, they're in this makeshift greenhouse. In fact, if you come here, let me show you actually. Not the prettiest looking thing, admittedly, but here they are. Nice and happy, except the llama back there, of course. That guy does it every year. I mean, he's a bit cold sensitive. But as you can see, I mean, they're not thriving, but at the same time, they're not dying. And that's, again, because these guys are mobile. I'm able to move them to a secure location, sheltered location when it's cold, and also when it's hot. But for the other trees that I know can handle the cold, citrus, no problem at all. They're out here. And also, like the passion fruit vine. I mean, the whole thing that you see that's trellising up against the wall here, the whole roots is just in this little container here. And without this, I mean, there's really no way I can have a vine system here. But yeah, I mean, I'm expecting him to produce fruits for me next year. But I've got the whole side of my fence trellised up, so why not make good use out of the wall? I mean, it's not doing anything, so might as well. So that's reason number two, is the mobility, and therefore you can easily protect them from the environment when need to. So there's this one last one, which I don't know if you could consider that a benefit or not, but to me, I do feel that it is a good benefit, in that the trees grown in containers are going to be nowhere near the same size as the trees grown in ground. Good example. BQ Longin, okay? He's a good size. My guess would be 12 feet tall, 12 feet high. Good size tree. I have another BQ that I purchased around the same time, and therefore it's about the same age. But this is what he looks like. I mean, he's in a container, so that makes it appear like he's taller. But when you look at the size of the trunk system, he's obviously smaller. And the reason for that, of course, is when in a container, I mean, its root systems are confined to the space and the resources that's available in the container. Whereas the tree over there, its roots are, who knows how far it goes, but it's probably towards where I'm standing now. So the vastness of the resources that's made available to the tree that's in the ground makes them so much bigger compared to the ones that are in containers. They're going to be artificially smaller, but at the same time, it still will produce fruits. And your, I'm assuming your goal in growing these is really for the fruits. Um, so yeah, they're going to be almost dwarf size when compared to their countertop that's in the ground. So here are some caveats with growing trees in containers in addition to your growing medium. Unlike the trees that are grown in the ground, where they are a bit more forgiving in terms of getting fed and also more importantly in terms of getting watered. These guys in containers are relying on you to water and feed them, because again the roots are confined to the space. There's really nowhere else to go. So you've got to be consistent in your water practice as well as feeding the trees. All of my containerized trees, I actually feed them slightly more than the ones that are in the ground, just because again, with the whole mycorrhizal network, these guys have no problem at all uptaking nutrient. Whereas these trees, I mean, they're disconnected from the whole mycorrhizal network that's in the ground. So they rely on you to feed them and water them consistently. Now, this is a bit controversial, but I know a number of nurseries don't use organic fertilizers in container trees just because you don't get they don't get the same performance as if it were to be applied to in-ground trees. So instead, what they do is they actually use synthetic fertilizer, which the tree doesn't care. I mean, nitrogen is nitrogen. However, for the long-term health of the tree, they respond better to organic fertilizers. And that's what I use in my yard. So yeah, I mean, these guys have no problem growing and fruiting in containers. So and one thing that you can do to give them a boost when planting a tree in container is, again, locking the mycorrhizal network. You can actually inoculate the growing medium with mycorrhizal fungus. So in my case, anytime I upsize a container or put something in a container, I just get myself a bag of this, get maybe a scoop or two. This is essentially mycorrhizal fungus that you add to your mixture, and then it wakes them up, activates them, and they start working. They attach themselves to the roots and start mining the nutrient that is around in the growing medium. And it just gives the tree an extra source of energy. So that's what I do. For the most part, when planting trees in the ground, because I feel that my yard is pretty good in terms of the microorganisms that's all in the ground, I really don't add this. I mean, my trees seem to do fine. I mean, I want to say the last tree that I put in the ground was this guy right here, this lychee here. I mean, so far it's not been phased by the frost. And in fact, if you come closer, see all this bird poop? This is a fertilizer. This is self-fertilizing thanks to the bird poop. So yeah, I mean, like, look. I mean, this is again, this is native soil. It's dripping like very slowly, but yeah. So that's. Oh, you know what? One last thing. Keep in mind too, because the tree is in a container. Imagine its roots are gonna be bound up. It's gonna be probably encircling the container, and the roots are just literally maybe right behind the plastic container here, which would mean it's 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 a bit more exposed to the environment. When it's 29 degrees out here, like it was today and the day before, the roots are, you're talking maybe a couple of degrees above freezing. Unlike the trees in the ground where it's a toasty 50 degrees underneath us. So that's one consideration too. That's why I've got more of my sensitive stuff in a sheltered greenhouse. But these guys I know can take it. That's why I left them out here. So this is especially important during the summer season. Most containers are black, which means when the sun shines on it, they get super hot. So if you can, I mean, try your best to somehow get them out of the sun while still having sunlight on the foliage. But yeah, I mean, when the sun is shining on this and it's 110 degrees outside, imagine how hot the plastic's going to be. And again, the roots of the trees are mere inches from the plastic, if not touching it. So just another consideration. So anyhow, yeah, there's some. It's not a total loss. I mean, if you have no real estate, I mean, for example, if I live in a high-rise skyscraper, my only option really would be containerized trees. But if you have no option, or if you want to expand your trees, uh, there's absolutely nothing wrong with growing them in containers. Just mind you the different considerations that I just mentioned. So anyhow, all right, have a good afternoon.